Good morning. Good morning. Okay, I made it back from visiting my parents. I told you all last week I was going to see my parents. I made it back last night, and I also told you last week that HopeWest is one of my favorite nonprofits. They are one of the biggest nonprofits, I think, in our area in terms of the scope of what they do, their budget, and their organization. And not only am I super impressed with their mission and their work and their staff, but also they run a really cool resale store on Main Street that I bet we're all familiar with. And so here this morning to talk about HopeWest and how they operate, what they do, where they get their money, how they spend that money, how our Montrose HopeWest is part of the larger Grand Junction HopeWest organization, is their program director, Kelly Thompson. He manages all things for the Montrose part of HopeWest. He originally, when he came to Montrose nearly 30 years ago, was an elementary school teacher. And, and he loved the kids, he even loved the parents, but he didn't necessarily see a future in education for him personally, and found himself working for HopeWest. And over the years, he's worked his way up to really the top of our Montrose HopeWest organization. And so let's give Kelly a big warm welcome this morning.
Good morning, and thank you for that beautiful introduction. Yeah, I don't think I would have ever seen myself working in hospice, ever. But hospice kind of found me, and I will tell you, it has been the most rewarding and lovely experience of my life. And so if you think it sounds like a really awful, depressing, boring job, it is not. We bring hope to people, and we bring the best end-of-life situation that we can to them. So I have prepared, and I'm going to pause just for a minute so Julie can pass these out. But I prepared basically some cliff notes for you because I know I'm going to be spewing a ton of information at you. And if you're like me later, you'll say, now what did he say about fill in the blank? So these are just kind of bullet points, but I'll try to follow this pretty succinctly. And I won't cover everything that's on here, but we'll kind of walk through what the HopeWest hospice experience is, and then we'll take some questions at the very end. So I'm just curious, how many in the room have had some sort of a hospice experience, a loved one? Okay. All right, so 30 years ago, maybe 2 hands would have gone up. So really the hospice movement came into the United States in the early 70s. Wasn't very well received, and in fact we call it the dreaded H word. Don't mention the H word. And we're slowly changing that because I think there's some things, preconceptions that we have about what hospice means. And I always start with what hospice is not, because I feel like people do have preconceived notions, and I want us to get those out of our head. So hospice is not just for the elderly, although most of our patients are over 75. We have served child and teen patients. And so the goal of hospice is to make the last days of your life comfortable. And that's what we're all about. We're not just for cancer patients. I think there's a big misconception that it's just for cancer patients, but we serve people that have pulmonary issues, chronic heart failure, Parkinson's. So there's a whole myriad of end-of-life illnesses that we will step in and kind of help support the family. This is the big one. I should move this dot up to the very top. It's not for the last week of life. And I'll tell you, my own father had pulmonary fibrosis. And I could tell my mom was really struggling. And so one day I just said, Dad, would you listen to a presentation from one of our nurses and see how we could help you and Mom through this journey? And he says, I don't need those people in my house. Those people. So right there, I knew there was some things attached to that. And oftentimes people say, I'm not ready for that. And they do feel, they have this conception that there's got to be no question that I'm dying someday this week, and now I'm ready for hospice. Although we can come in and help with some cares and comfort, I'll be honest with you, that's the worst time to open up and say, let's accept hospice. There's so much more we could have done. In fact, I sat with a lady from my church on Monday in my office, and she says, the one regret I have is that we didn't call you sooner. And it was that last week of life. I think he was on our services for about 3 days. And we did what we could, but there was so much more that we could have done. So we would like to get over that hump, and you can see that almost a quarter of the patients that do come on to services are there for less than 7 days. So that's a significant number that we would like to turn around and help those people through that journey, and give some comfort and support. So hospice does not accelerate death, nor do we prolong life. So sometimes we hear this about, my wife we signed up on hospice, and the team came in and they gave her a shot of morphine, and in an hour she was dead. And it's like, that's euthanasia, and it's pretty much illegal. We can't do that. But what they're seeing is that somebody is either in so much discomfort or pain that once that is alleviated, the body takes over and says, okay, let's go ahead and close down now because I'm comfortable. So, we're programmed to fight for life. And if we're not comfortable, the body can't do what it wants to naturally do. So that's something I'd like for everybody to say, yeah, we don't do that. We're not pushy. We're not pushy. I think one of the things too that we find is when people, they're afraid of that presentation. They're afraid of people coming in and saying, here's what we can do to help you. And if they sign up, we've got this imaginary giant fish hook in them now, and they can't get off the fish hook. That's not true. If you sign up on a Thursday and your doctor calls you on the Friday and says this miraculous treatment just came on the market and I think it's going to cure you, you call us up and you say, I'm going to try this treatment, can I sign off services? No questions asked, absolutely. Okay, so we don't interrogate people, we don't pressure you, we don't push back when you say, I want to try something different. So it's all about supporting you. You are the pilot of your life, you're the pilot of your health care, and we're there to support that. Sometimes that happens at odds with your family members, and again, that's where we become experts and we help navigate that and work through that so that we support the patient 100%. We are not a sad organization, I mentioned that earlier. So we bring comfort to people, we bring hope to people. I mean, you can still have hope and know that this is going to take me. And the news that we all know is none of us get out of this alive. Right, so how do we make it the best that we can possibly have? It also means we're not throwing in the towel. I think a lot of people said, I'm not ready for that, I still want to fight. And where there's some parameters around that. So typically we can't accept anybody on HopeWest services or hospice services unless there's been a doctor's referral that says, I believe with your disease progression, you have 6 months or less to live. Okay, so that has to be a stipulation, and we're required by that by Medicare and Medicaid, who we receive funding from. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you're giving up and that, okay, this will be the week that I stop living. We have had patients on our services for up to 5 years, 6 years. So it also doesn't mean that if I live past 6 months, they're gonna kick me off now. We just have to recertify. So we have to have a physician come visit you and certify that, yeah, the disease is still there, it's still progressing, we still believe that probably 6 months. So we just recertify every 6 months. That can go on as many years as we need for it to. Sometimes it's pretty obvious. It's like, yeah, you're doing pretty well right now. So we're gonna back you off of hospice services, but we don't wanna pull the rug of support out from under you, so we're gonna put you on palliative care services. So palliative care, that's always a word that it took me about 4 years to figure out what's palliative care and how is that different from hospice. So a hospice diagnosis would say you have 6 months or less to live. Palliative care is that I have a chronic disease, so I have chronic heart failure. I'm not within 6 months, but I know that chronic heart failure is gonna eventually take me. But I do need some help with and some support in the home. So the nice thing about palliative care, it ensures 1 RN visit a month at a minimum, 1 RN visit, it can be more, and it gives that lifeline in the middle of the night. So 2 o'clock in the morning, something happens, you can call our triage center and we'll send a nurse out. You don't have to go to the ER. So that's nice. So that is what hospice is not, okay? What hospice is we are patient-centered. I already mentioned that. You drive the boat, you pilot the ship, you pilot the plane, whatever you want, an analogy you want to put on that. We provide compassionate care for people. So it's a full encompassing thing. It's not just the physical, but it's the spiritual. We have an incredible social work team, and I know social workers unfortunately have a bad name sometimes because we think they remove children, they remove people, and all of that's a piece of what they do. Our social workers are really in there to help navigate the care. So, for example, we have a lot of veterans that come on our services and they've never applied for their veteran benefits. Well, that application is about that thick. So our social workers will swoop in and help with that. And so a lot of times, a friend of mine whose husband is on service right now has been doing this for a number of years, being the sole caregiver, and she's worn out, and she just needed 5 days where she could recoup and recover and take a breath. And so our social workers arrange for that respite care, so we move the patient into a short-term facility and give them a break from their caregiver, but we also give the caregiver a break from caregiving. So those are 5-day respites, and they can occur as many times as they need to. As I mentioned, we offer hope for comfort when curative measures are exhausted. So again, that's the stipulation for coming on to hospice, is that you either choose to not have any curative measures taken. I had a very good friend who was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer, and she says, I don't want to go through that. I'm just going to let life take its course. And so based on her desires and her physician's agreement that that's probably a good move, we signed her on to services. But we do, for those people that say, I'm not ready quite yet to just say, let's let life take over. I want to spend time with my children. I want to spend time with my grandchildren and all that. What can we do to get you comfortable? Are you in physical pain? Are you in emotional pain? Do you have spiritual duress that we can work on? We have an incredible bereavement team too that will help the family prior to death, working on anticipatory grief. So we know what's coming, and that makes us sad. So how do we work through that? We are experts in pain and symptom management. So we have a myriad of ways of handling what is discomforting for people. I already mentioned the spiritual, emotional, and social support for family members, and gave you some examples of that. Our team here in Montrose, I just counted yesterday, we have 45 now. So we are at about 22 nurses. We have 3 social workers, 7 CNAs, 2 chaplains, a physician, and a nurse practitioner here, just in the Montrose office to help facilitate your care. And when I first assumed this role, this was about 7 years ago, we were hovering between 60 and 65 patients, and I think we had 16 nurses then. We had 1 chaplain, so we've grown exponentially here. About 8 weeks ago, we hit an all-time high for patient census. We had 123 hospice patients just here in Montrose. So that's a reflection of our aging population, the growth of the city, and I think a lot of times just the education that comes around hospice and what it really does, and what we really are here for. So medications are covered for all related hospice diagnoses. So I'm gonna explain this really clearly. So I'm on service for chronic heart failure, and I've been taking Rogaine for years. It doesn't work. I'm just telling you, it doesn't work. So the Rogaine's not going to get covered. I'm going to have to continue to pay for that out of my own pocket. But anything that's related to your hospice diagnosis is covered by Medicare or Medicaid benefits. We have nearly 300 volunteers in Montrose that help us. Most of these are working in our heirloom store, which Barbara mentioned. It is a great store. That's where I started my career with HopeWest. But we also have patient care volunteers who will come in and provide that hour of respite for the caregivers so that they can go have a cup of coffee with somebody or go get their groceries done. We have volunteers that help provide haircuts for patients. I'm really in need of a massage therapist, so if you know of a massage therapist that would like to donate an hour a month for a patient, that would be fabulous, let me know. But we have gardeners that work at our facility, our office facility. We have administrative assistants that help us do the work. So organizationally, we have just under 2,000 volunteers that help us do the work that we do. So we couldn't do it without them. I've already. No. This is organizationally. Yeah. So I should talk a little bit about our organization. So HopeWest was founded in 1993 in Grand Junction. So that's where our mothership is. We care for about 500 patients in that area. We have a Delta team that cares for about 70 to 75 patients. Montrose, we started here in 1995, so 2 years after the Grand Junction office started, and so we're in our 30th year here in Montrose. So we've been around for 30 years. We are Western Slope's only nonprofit organization. Only nonprofit hospice organization. So we are the only ones that do this as a nonprofit. We are help for the whole family. Our care team, as I mentioned, sometimes that caregiver is really going through a struggle emotionally, knowing that they're going to lose their loved one. And so how can we support them and provide cares for them? And I'm looking around and I'm seeing a lot of spouses of patients that we've cared for. So thank you for being here. And I'm seeing volunteers that work with us too. So appreciate all that you do for us. We provide all the necessary medical equipment. So hospital bed, oxygen, all that stuff is paid for by your Medicare and Medicaid benefit. We help with the goals of care. So sometimes, as I said, we have a patient that may just say, I'm willing to just let life take its course. And the spouse is like, oh no, I want you for as long as I can have you. And somehow we have to bring those two together. So there's a support system for both of them and an understanding for both of them. So this is interesting. Our hospice services, where do most of you want to be at the end of your life?
Hawaii.
In your condominium, right?
Not the hospital?
Not the hospital. Most of you don't want to be in the hospital. Most of you don't want to be in a facility. You want to be home. So that's where 95% of our patients are cared for, is in their home. So whatever that home may be, it may be a freestanding home, it may be an apartment, it may be a facility, a long-term care facility, or a assisted living center. We had served people in trailers. You know, that's what they had for a home. One of my favorite stories, and this was out of my orientation 11 years ago now, when I was first starting with HopeWest. I was in orientation, and one of our senior leaders was telling a story about a gentleman who was homeless. He had been living under a bridge, and his friends noticed he was not doing very well. They took him to the ER, and he was basically actively dying. So we admitted him to our care center in Grand Junction, and I just thought that was the most heartwarming story, because of course this guy wasn't on Medicare, he wasn't on Medicaid, there was no payer source, there was no motivation for us, no money motivation for us at all to care for him, but he was a human being. The story always chokes me up, but he was a human being, and we all deserve that dignity at the end of life. And I just thought, that man must have thought he died and gone to heaven before it ever happened. You know, because our care facility, it really resembles a 5-star hotel. It is stunningly beautiful. So if you're ever in Grand Junction, check out Spoons. That's our restaurant. So Spoons is right below our care center. And that was designed by Christy Whitney with great intentionality. She wanted the public to know us before they needed us. So they're a beautiful restaurant, they're great food, and it serves the patients upstairs, but it's a stunning facility, and we wanted that experience for people. So, I think that's the joy of the work that I do too, is that I feel like we serve from our heart and not from our wallet. So that gentleman was a case in point. We weren't going to get a dime for that, but it wasn't about that. It wasn't about the dime that we were going to get or not get. It was about caring for somebody and giving them that dignity. So when are people ready for hospice? Okay, so I've touched on this a little bit. The disease is not responding to curative measures. Your physician is saying, we've done just about all we can do. Okay, so uncontrolled pain or symptoms related to a disease process. Your medical provider can deem that you have only 6 months or less if it follows its normal progression. But we don't have to wait for the physician. Okay, I think that's a lot of times where people get snagged too, is my doctor hasn't told me this yet. So we have a process called self-referral. So you call yourself and you say, I have this disease. I feel like I'm done fighting. Can you tell me what can be done here? We'll schedule a visitation by a nurse or a provider, so either a nurse practitioner or possibly our physician, although it's usually handled by the nurse or the NP. And they will come out and visit you and do an assessment, kind of talk to you about goals of care. What do you want? What do you want for the last days of your life? What are you looking to do or not do? And a lot of times through that assessment, the nurse can say, this person is 100% ready for hospice. So there's some criteria that we look at. They're called activities of daily living. So can you feed yourself? Can you cook for yourself? Can you dress yourself? Can you shower? Can you toilet yourself? And if 3 of those 6 are missing, you're probably pretty well qualified to come on to hospice services. So they can tell that almost immediately in that visit. Then what we do is we follow up either with your primary care physician, and we always do that as a courtesy anyway. We received a self-referral from your patient. We agree that they're probably ready. And so we do a lot of collaboration and talking with your provider about goals of care and that type of stuff. So it doesn't have to be initiated by your physician. You can actually initiate that, and then we'll help follow up with the footwork on that. So let's flip over to the back side. How is hospice paid for? I've already mentioned that briefly. Thank you for coming. I knew you had an appointment. Take care. Medicare and Medicaid benefits can pay up to 100% without copay. So generally, it is 100% paid for. Now, sometimes we have people that were in the service and we have VA benefits as well. So VA benefits can oftentimes kick in and kind of layer in with that as well, or sometimes they just supersede it. It's kind of whichever benefit is the best. So that's what we go with. That's the trouble with this age. You have to have the glasses on. We also have private insurances that a lot of times will provide hospice benefits. So with VA and private insurance that provides hospice benefits, the door is a little bit more wide open. So typically with a Medicare and Medicaid paid benefit, our parameters are pretty tight on that. So once you come onto hospice, you cannot receive any more curative treatments. With VA and private insurance, a lot of times they will allow that to continue. Now, we work really hard with all of our patients. So there are times where we'll advocate for some procedure that might be considered curative in some realms, but we can push that through as a palliative care. So let me talk about that. So let's say you have pancreatic cancer, and if I was to receive some sort of a treatment that would help with the pain of that, I'm not really pursuing that as a curative measure, but I'm helping that as a comfort measure. So that's where we will come in, advocate for the patient and say, yes, we will pay for this. So even though Medicare, Medicaid won't pay for it, HopeWest individually will pay for that. So a lot of times when people have to have fluids drained off their lungs, we will pay for that service on our own to help with that. So we care for all patients regardless of ability to pay. I just told you about the gentleman that was homeless. Sometimes we have people that are not, they're younger. They're not on Medicare. They're not on Medicaid, but they have a life-ending illness, and so we will work with them if they don't have insurance or any ability to pay. We will work with them because we believe, again, everybody deserves a dignified ending. So we do not turn away people like that. So philanthropy covers unreimbursed care, what I was just talking about. It's about just a little under $1 million a year across all of our service areas. So these are those treatments that we might feel have a palliative benefit for the patient to ease pain or symptoms. It might be that person that just has no funding, has no Medicare, no Medicaid. So that's why we have things like the heirloom store. That's why we have galas. That's why we have golf tournaments. That's why we have people who believe in our cause and donate to us or leave us in their estates. And we raised nearly $3.3 million doing that. And you think, wow, you just went from a nonprofit to a profit, didn't you? No, because most of that money is spent. So one of the conditions of Medicare and Medicaid, so if I'm a hospice patient, Medicare and Medicaid will pay all for all the care. So we receive money from the federal government for that. But one of the conditions of participation, number of the conditions of participation, we have to provide palliative care. So we receive no funding for that. We have to provide bereavement services. We receive no funding for that. So that's why we have to raise this kind of money, is because those services we're required to provide, but we have to raise our own money for us. So it's skin in the game. So, and that's not a complaint. That's just the reality of it. We like to have skin in the game. We think that holds us accountable. So I'm most proud of our bereavement services that HopeWest does. So we could basically say, let's do a group setting. Doesn't matter if you're 8 years old or if you're an adult or however you had your loss. We'll do a group setting and we'll just let 50 people come in a group and we'll talk about your grief. Well, how comfortable does that sound? It's comfortable for some people, but not others. And we could satisfy that requirement just by doing that. But we don't. We go a mile deep instead of the mile wide. And I'll talk about our children's, because our children grieve differently than adults. And just our children's programs, we'll do school counseling, so we can move into the schools and we meet children at the school who've had loss. We do one-on-one. 2 weekends ago, we just had our Camp Good Grief. So this was for up to teenagers. We have an itty-bitty camp for the kids that are a little too young to be separated from mom and dad for the night. Right here in Montrose, we have an equine program. These are for the kids that have really struggled with their grief. They've been in school groups, they've done one-on-one, they've done a number of things, and they're still just stuck in their grief. And we have an incredible farm south of town that has equine, EGALA is the name of the therapy. They have EGALA trained horses and therapists. And so it's just a pivotal program for some of these kids that just have not been able to get beyond their grief. So you can see how robust that is. Adults, we have a little more capacity to deal with our grief, but we do have group therapy. We do have ongoing group. So once they've been through what we call mending hearts, it's the initial grief group. There's carry-on groups. We have one-on-one counseling for adults and anticipatory grief for adults. We have a family grief called Forget Me Not, and that's beautiful. It's where we bring the children and the grandchildren and the grandparents and the whole family together to help process that grief. So we really try to be robust about this. We also have a program here in Montrose, and this is what I love about HopeWest. It's not always just hospice related. We have a program where people who have experienced loss through suicide can come and meet. So we really try to, again, it's knowing who we are before you need us, and just realizing that grief comes in a lot of different ways. And that was a significant source of grief in our community, was suicide, and so we wanted to address that. So I did talk a lot about palliative care already. You don't have that 6-month diagnosis yet, but you have a life-ending illness. We can step in and kind of help with pain and symptom management, emotional and spiritual support. The beauty of that is you have that 24-hour lifeline if something happens at 3 o'clock in the morning and you need a nurse. Okay. That program, again, is not, we have to provide it, but it's not funded in any way. So that is a self-pay program for our patients, but we also have a sliding scale on that. So if someone is just not able to pay the full amount, we can assess that and we'll work within people's budget to help with that. I talked extensively about adult bereavement and HopeWest kids. Barb, how are we doing on time?
We're
Are we
good on time.
Okay.
We can ask questions for 5 minutes to 25 minutes. So whatever
Sure,
works for you.
okay. I'm just about to wrap it up. So I already talked a little bit about our history. And as I said, I don't need to read every single bullet point of that. I do want to talk real briefly about just the difference between a profit and a nonprofit hospice. And you probably think, oh, I know where he's going to go on this. And it's like, yeah, I am going to toot our own horn here just a little bit. So the difference between a nonprofit and a profit is a profit hospice has investors in the background, and they're wanting a return on their dollar. They want that return on their dollar. You can see the numbers here. When hospice first started in the United States, we were, is it 27? I'm probably just remembering this by my head, but I think there was only about 27% of the hospices were for profit. We're up to 75% now. So 3/4 of the hospices that are in existence as of 2024 are for profit, but almost 95% of the hospices that are starting up are for profit. So nobody's saying, oh, let me go start a nonprofit hospice. So do you understand the difference between the two of those? So the startups, almost the whole majority of them are saying we're going to get into this to make money. So how that can make a difference in your care. For example, this is one of the standards of HopeWest, is when it has become very evident that a person is in their last week of life, there's physical signs and emotional signs and spiritual signs. We're pretty good at seeing those markers. We will start doing daily visits with the nurse, unless the family doesn't want them, because we don't want to be an intrusion. But we'll be there daily to help support the family, help support the patient, make sure that they are comfortable and just having the best possible experience that they can have. If I'm out to make money, am I going to send a nurse every day to somebody's house? Probably not, because that's our biggest expense, is the nurses. So I'll tell you that is one huge difference of for-profit versus nonprofit. So I do believe that we drive from our heart and not so much from our wallet. So Julie, if you'll hand out the other handout. I don't care what you do with this one, you can dispose of this, but the next handout I'm going to share with you. Please promise me you'll put it in a drawer somewhere, tuck it away, because here's why. You have a relative in West Virginia, and you call to check in on them, and they say, oh my gosh, my world's turned upside down. My spouse has just been diagnosed with this. I don't know what to do. I have no idea where to go, what to do to get help. And that's when you go, oh, hey, I listened to this talk, and they provided some information that you can look up in your area to find out who can help you in your area. So this report comes from Medicare and Medicaid. We have nothing to do with these numbers. This is all driven by the government, but this is how we're rated as a hospice. We're rated as a 4-star hospice out of 5. I want to tell you, we're on the cusp of that 5 as an organization, but here in Montrose, we are a 5. And we have been a 5 for a long, long time. So, yeah, so we are a 5, and these are families that we cared for their loved ones, and this is how they rated us. So some pretty significant numbers there when you look at nationally how hospices perform. But there's a QR code there. If you're like me and it's like, oh, QR codes kind of scare me, there's also a website there. So this relative in West Virginia, you can say, go to this website, and it will tell you who the hospices are in your area. They will tell you how they are rated. They will tell you if they're a for-profit or a nonprofit, and you can get a wealth of information to help that person in West Virginia or Maine, or Oregon, or Utah, or wherever they are. So hang on to that piece of paper if you would, because I think that will be great. Medicare, Medicaid updates this information about every 2 years, so this is the most recent. But you can go on this website anytime and check, how's HopeWest and Montrose doing? So the rating that you'll see there is for the entire organization. But I'm just telling you because I'm very proud of this. We are 5-star hospice here in Montrose. So I think that's my spiel. So what questions did I generate? Yeah,
And then
Ross.
wait, if you're new to forum, that what we do is I pass around the mic, because that way we can all hear your important questions. So just hold up and I'll bring the mic around. And hold it close to your mouth, yes.
I'd like to just say thank you very much, Kelly. My wife was in palliative care and home and in hospice for 39 months. And it was, she was really cared. Not just Kelly's organization here, but the group in Delta takes care of the folks who are at Colorado. So it had to flip-flop back and forth between two different organizations, and it was seamless. I'm going to tear up a little bit here. I knew my wife was going to pass, and I was over there right early in the morning and holding her hand. And the thing that made it best of all the care, as far as I'm concerned, is that when she passed, the nurse made a telephone call to the organization. On a Saturday morning, within 20 minutes, this gal showed up at 7:15 in the morning, and she said, "Grace, just sit down. I got it." And everything was taken care of. She had all the information there. Everything was taken care of all the way through. And then the other thing I'd like to just add to this is, even 6 months after my wife passed, they called me up and said, "Hey, how you doing? Are you hanging in there?" And so I just have a lot of thanks for you.
Well, thank you, Ray, and it was an honor to walk with you and your wife and help that journey.
Hospice nurses are pretty amazing. We all know that William sits in the back of the room and records for him, but his wife is a hospice nurse, so hats off to her, and if you would pass on. She's pretty amazing. Other questions? Or
She is more than it. She's taking care of me if I ever need it.
Good morning, Kelly. Thanks again for an excellent presentation. My question is, years and years ago, I was sort of indirectly involved, and there was a big push for an inpatient facility. As we know, it didn't happen. Is that still on the table?
Yeah, great question. So we had a family here in Montrose that had donated land to us to do an inpatient facility. And that there was a stipulation that it needed to occur within a certain number of years. Our market studies show that we still, our need, and I don't understand how they do these market studies and all that, but our need in Montrose is less than one patient. It's like 0.78% need. I don't know how they arrive at that. So the land did revert back to the family. As I mentioned earlier, most people want to be in their home. So when we do have that need for inpatient care, we do transport them to Grand Junction. Now, sometimes if you have a spousal unit, one's 93 and the other one's 95, Grand Junction that's a burden to get them up there, although the family can stay in the room with the patient. But if that's too cumbersome for them, we do have a contract with the hospital, and we have a hospice room there. So that, at this point, has served those needs. So our unit in Grand Junction is a 13-bed unit. It's not a residential unit, so that's kind of, sometimes people misunderstand that I go on hospice and then I can go to that place and live out my days. It's not a residential unit. This is for people who are suddenly experiencing symptom or pain management issues. We're trying to get those under control so that they can go back to home, because that's really where they want to be. So.
Well, this seems like an appropriate moment for levity about the inpatient rooms in our hospital here. When my husband and I first moved to Montrose about 20 years ago, he wasn't familiar yet. He was the new doctor at Montrose Hospital. But he said, man, there's this beautiful room up on that end of the floor, and if I ever get sick, I want to be in that room. Like, it has like soft pillows and plants, and then someone told him that was the hospice room. And he said, oh, I take that back. But apparently it looks really homey and comforting. Is that still the case?
It was the case. It was the case. There was a new management, a shift in management for the housing part of the, and they had to. There were certain things that they needed to remove. So there was a quilt in there that hung on the wall. They said that
Didn't meet the hospital.
it didn't meet the hospital criteria for a sterile and cleanliness.
That's
so,
too bad.
So we had to dehumanize it.
Make it less homey.
But yeah, just to keep it within the standards of hospital.
That probably means there's no new doctors saying that that's their favorite room anymore.
I'm a supporter of compassionate choices, and there are 10 states that allow this with doctors' approval in the last state of life. How does hospice handle supporting this?
So I think you're referring to medical aid in dying.
Yes.
Okay, MAID.
It's
So
legal in Colorado.
yes, it is legal in Colorado. So our we are not involved in that at all. We support the patient's decision. So how that looks for hospice, if a patient has decided, I want to pursue medical aid in dying, they find the physician that can write that order. It has to be 2 physicians that write that order. Our physicians cannot be one of those. That's just HopeWest policy. But once the family has made that decision, we will support that. We cannot be in the room when they take the concoction, but we can come in immediately after they've done that to ensure comfort and emotional support for the patient as well as the family. So again, it's we are very much supporting the patient in their decision, but we cannot actually participate in that writing of the prescription or administering it. The patient has to be able to do that themselves. So.
Kelly, I just like looking out in this room, and I think about hospice from 1992 when I first heard about it years and years ago. But what can we do in our community and on a person-to-person basis to help hospice besides giving money and coming to golf and fundraisers? What do you need from us? What can we do to help your organization? Because we really need to think about that, because you are such an instrumental part of our community. So what do you need from us?
You know, I think it's always the dissemination of information. So, you know, assuring people we're not there just for the last week of life. That's not the best time to come on services. You pilot all that. So you come on services, and after 3 weeks, it's like, yeah, I'm not really feeling this. Can I sign off? Absolutely. We're not gonna fish hook you or anything like that. So I think it's disseminating some of that information. One of the common things I hear is, well, hospice just loads people up on morphine till they die, and it's like, no, we don't. That's murder. We can't do that. Nor do we want to do that. We do use morphine as a comfort measure because it's very effective, especially for people who are going through lung cancer or any type of a pulmonary and you just feel like you're gasping for air and you cannot breathe, morphine takes that feeling away immediately, and all of a sudden the body relaxes and you don't feel like you're gasping for air. You don't feel like you're oxygen deprived or starving. So it is a very comforting medication. Some people say, I'd rather not do that. I'm afraid of becoming addicted. Well, you probably don't have enough time to do that. But we don't, we're not there to argue that. We're gonna respect that request and say, well, here's some other options that have similar effects, but they don't have addictive, so that they'll be better for you. So we work really hard to meet the patient where they are and what they need in their care. Bob?
My first experience with hospice was back in 1988 in Honolulu. My dad was under hospice care, and that's where I got familiar with hospice, and they took real good care of me. And I guess the second thing I'd like to mention, I don't have any questions, so.
That's fine.
My wife wanted to die at home, so hospice helped, and she got her wish. And one thing that I didn't realize, that she would look like she was in a coma. And Bethany says, just because they look like they're in a coma, you can hold her hand, rub her arm, and talk to her. So she actually gave 7 words to me. And I guess I'll tell her what that. I told her, I love you, and she says, I love you too. And then I says, I'm sorry I was so mean to you, but trying to get her better, like take your medications and so forth. And she just says, that's okay. And that was the last word she said. Then our whole family was 3 sons and 2 wives. And we had trouble with our sewer system in the pasture. So the sewer truck came, and it's a new sewer company. So I had to show him where the manhole covers were. And so my daughter-in-law, she came out, and it was like in February, and it had snow, and it was all muddy, and so she said, you better come in. By the time I'm ready, she had been. And I felt so bad. And so I got to talk to Bethany afterwards, and I told her, I'm so sorry that I wasn't there. And here's what she said. Just about 50% of the spouses are not there. A lot of them excuse themselves because they do not want to see their spouse die. So I am one that really supports hospice, and I'm so glad you are in Montrose.
Thank you, Bob. Bethany, that he's speaking of, is our adult bereavement counselor, and she is amazing. She walks on water. So, and I hear what you're saying, because a lot of, we had a very good friend, Janet, together, mutual friend, who said, I wanted all my friends in the room when I go. And there was a moment, someone said, I'm gonna go out and lay on the couch for 10 minutes. 2 people said, I need to go home or I need to go get something at the grocery store for dinner. I said, I'm gonna go home and have dinner with my family. And I'm not kidding, it was a 10-minute frame where nobody was in the room, and that's when she chose to leave. And we all felt that same thing. It's like, oh no, we promised we'd be in the room. And we really do believe this, that in the final moments, we have way more power than we give credit for. And I think sometimes people decide, I really don't think they need to see this. I'm gonna slip away now. And I kind of think Deb probably thought, oh, thank God they finally left. What took you so long? So I don't know if I'm just self-comforting or what, but I really do think it was that moment of they were here for me, and I have a window that I can leave, and I'm gonna leave now. So, yeah.
So Kelly, thanks for that. And you know, I love hospice and I love everything that you do for our community. But I think you kind of said it, and I'm going to give a positive shout out to your store, Heirlooms for Hospice. If you don't go shopping there, you need to go shopping there. And the people are always so nice. It's a great place to donate your higher end clothes and household items, and then turn around and walk the block and go back in and buy them because you forgot. Like, I didn't want to get rid of that just yet. Yeah, that's.
I bought my own clothes back before.
Yeah, I've actually gone to look for my own clothes, and I saw somebody wearing them in town, but that's okay. But yeah, that's a very positive part of hospice in our community as well.
It's not a thrift store. I mean, what we hear people all the time say, I can't believe this is a resale store.
We need to stop. I see there's still hands. I see you. Unfortunately, one of the really cool things about Forum is we start on time and we end on time. Let's give Kelly a really warm thank you.